Shannon Watkins, and I'm here today with the Martin Center's managing editor, Anthony Hennon. Anthony recently wrote an article about the rise of student health struggles and is here to shed some light on the issue. So Anthony, in your article, you write about the uptick in student anxiety. How much in general terms has student anxiety increased in the past 10 or 20 years?
So it's hard to say because we don't have great data for this. It's not like we have with a lot of other higher ed stats. We can find tuition, we can find student enrollment. There's no equivalent for student anxiety and mental health. But there's been an uptick in terms of mental health services that universities are offering, as well as students flocking to them, signing up, and actually taking it seriously. So some of this might just be student demand is increasing because students are more open about being anxious or being depressed or something like that. There's been some studies that have looked at psychological well-being in a vague way and seen that it's been on an uptick, especially since 2012. Some people tie that to social media use or smartphones, but a lot of it just comes from actually talking with college counselors, helping students, or high school counselors even, helping students think about what colleges to apply, or counselors at student mental health centers and talking with them and seeing, a lot of them are reporting it's going up. And so it does seem to be an increasing problem. The data isn't the best kind of to compare to 10, 20, 30 years ago, but there's definitely a trend here that a lot of schools are seeing.
Is there any consensus among student counselors about what is driving the rise in student anxiety? What do some of them say?
So yes and no. It does seem to be, again, a lot of it can be anecdotal, but there's a lot of agreement on this to a certain extent. So some of it comes from some counselors think, in general, it's going up. Other counselors might think it's not necessarily going up in general, but these problems are becoming stronger and more acute for some students. But in terms of causes, a lot of counselors will point to just general competitiveness going up, especially at highly selective schools or some prestigious private schools where students are competing against one another, and they're very self-aware of this, and they're very worried in terms of planning their lives out. I need to be the best here so I can get a better job. Other counselors see this as a big issue with helicopter parenting and parents being so involved with the process and being so involved with their kids and making sure that they're happy, they're safe, they're not stressed, that it's a certain sort of almost learned helplessness where kids aren't as independent as they might have been 10 or 20 years ago. So that's an issue. Some counselors see this as an issue just with social change and current events. We're so plugged into everything happening these days, whether in our own city or our own state or anywhere in the country, that students are stressing out about this more, or they're vaguely worried about terrorism or unrest or the economy, because it's so in our faces, especially on social media if you're using it a lot. There's other issues where there's concern about distinctiveness and standing out among everyone else, which I think is also connected with how competitive schools are and how competitive students are, where if they don't feel like, I am this unique person, that this adds some stress to them going through their daily lives and thinking, I need to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G and get, be doing everything, really stand out as a person. And there's also kind of this general concern with other directedness, or what other students think about them, of what their professors think of them, of what their parents think of them, and that seems to be adding some more stress in there too. So there's not necessarily, some counselors will say this one is a problem, but this one isn't. But there does seem to be at least 5, 6 kind of different points of agreement that counselors are coming on to.
You also note that the college counseling industry has grown. How much has it grown in recent years, and what kinds of students are taking advantage of these services?
Yeah, so this is a little separate from student anxiety on campus, where college counselors are talking to students about their mental health. This is more referring to high school seniors and juniors applying for colleges. So these is either high school counselors, maybe doing some private work on the side. This used to be restrained to wealthier students and wealthy families, but now it's becoming more mainstream, more middle school students. So in 2018, the entire college counseling as an industry was pulling in about 1.8 billion, almost 1.9 billion, which is about a 60% increase from a decade ago. You're also seeing, in the mid 2000s, there are about 2,000 college consultants or so. That's gone up to about 17,000 in 2019. So you're seeing a big increase where this might have been the norm for a lot of rich families and better off students. But with the explosion of it, it's not just rich families anymore. It's middle class students. It's students who are really focused on getting into a highly selective school. So it's expanding more and more. It's getting a little cheaper. It's not all high end anymore, but still, it's not an especially cheap thing to add on to the college application process.
What have colleges and universities done to respond to the rise in student mental health struggles? And has any of that changed during COVID-19?
Yeah, so this also varies greatly depending on what type of college it is. So the community colleges are distinct from public regional colleges, are distinct from these highly selective private schools. In general, a lot of schools have been expanding their mental health centers, hiring on more guidance counselors or all sorts of counselors to help students with depression, with anxiety, whatever they're concerned about with the college process. So that's ramped up in the past decade or so. You also have, with coronavirus, more outreach from colleges, reaching out to students, if you're stressed, here's some numbers you can call, these are the services we offer. So there's generally a stronger push to actually make students more aware of these services on campus. It's not necessarily buried in a handbook or anything like that. Then on the community college level, you've seen an increase with either emergency grants, where if a student's car breaks down or something, they can get some no strings attached money to get the car fixed so they can get back to coming to classes in their daily lives. You also see an increase in things like food banks, where if students are struggling, because anxiety and depression is going to differ depending on the type of student. An 18 to 22-year-old college student at a private school has different concerns from community colleges, where students might be going part-time, they'll be older, they're working jobs, or they have families to take care of. So this also plays into colleges are getting a better sense of the day-to-day struggles their students have. So some colleges might be expanding heavily with counselors and trying to get students to open up and realize there's help out here for you. Other colleges are focused on looking at economic distress just as much as mental distress. So it kind of depends on where the college is and what type of students it serves. But in general, and especially with coronavirus, there's a greater concern of making sure students can actually get through class. They can do their homework. If they don't have a laptop, a lot of community colleges, for example, are trying to expand and offer, renting out their laptops or providing other services like that. So it takes a lot of different shapes, a lot of forms, but at the very least, colleges are pouring more resources and more money into this problem.